In this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, Ashley Barnes joins us to talk about the realities of onboarding into flight medicine, dealing with imposter syndrome, mentorship, burnout, and why creating a supportive culture matters more than ever.
We're expected to go on critical call, one after the other, with hardly no decompression time in between to get that out. And that's a system failure all over the world. This is not just localized here. That is all over the world. And where we're trained to have this mindset and make these big decisions in the midst of chaos, guess what happens when that chaos is over? We are not thriving anymore. Like, that silence is deafening, you know? And it's like, you just get done with like this insanely critical patient, or, you know, telling a family member that their loved one is dead. And all of these things may seem easy in the moment because you've rehearsed it, you've done it over and over again. It's muscle memory.
Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. In this episode, we sit down with Ashley Barnes for an honest conversation about the journey into flight medicine and the realities that come with stepping into a high-performance critical care environment. From onboarding challenges and imposter syndrome to mentorship, mental health, and building confidence as a provider, this episode dives into the experiences many clinicians face, but don't always talk about. This discussion is packed with practical insight for new and experienced providers alike, and highlights the importance of self-awareness, continuing learning, and creating a supportive culture within EMS and air medical transport. Thank you to our sponsors, Airbus, Precision Aviation Group, Metro Aviation.
Welcome to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, brought to you by Vertical Helicasts and Vertical Valor Magazine. Produced in partnership with Echo, Every Coast Helicopter Operations. The Valor Flight Crew Podcast promotes the personnel and life-saving equipment behind helicopter air ambulance services. Join hosts Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider for in-depth interviews and expert insights from air medical personnel, pilots, communication specialists, and maintenance crews who play critical roles in airborne emergency response.
Line 1 accepting. Copy, line 1, gotcha, accepting. You're going to be talking to Red Feather 1 on LCEMS.
Welcome back to the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. As always, your hosts, Mike Fideli and Blake Schreider. How are you today, Blake?
I'm doing good, Mike. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. It feels like it's been
that
forever
sincere?
since I've talked to you. No. Well,
was that sincere? Did I say that with conviction?
I feel like I was convinced a little bit. Like I wasn't as unconvinced as I was the last time we had this conversation.
Yeah, true. Yeah, it's been that. You know, it's been okay. It's just been really busy. I think both you and I, like you said, we haven't done this in a little bit, and with you at work and me at work and all the extra stuff, trying to do all the extra teachings. I living each day like 3 hours at a time, trying to get to the next 3 hour spot.
Yeah, life has definitely been lifing lately.
It sure is.
So, yeah, but no, it feels like it's been forever. I'm glad to be able to join you here for another podcast and get back in the swing of things. So we do have a great discussion coming up today. And Blake, I want to take you back a little bit. If you can you think back to when you first started in this career in flight medicine?
Yes.
And that's what now? We're both around the 14-year mark, somewhere in that neighborhood.
Let me see. Carry the one.
No.
2013. Yeah. So 13 years ago.
So somewhere right around there. And do you remember what it was like coming into the industry? Like, do you think you were prepared?
No. No.
No. I mean, I had this like, you know, idea of what I thought flight medicine was. I had this idea of what I thought I was getting myself into. And then all of a sudden I was there and I was like, okay, one, this is the best job in the world. And two, what the hell did I just get myself into?
Yeah.
You know?
That was literally my words. I think, like, why did I do this to myself?
Well, our guest today has a whole lot to share about that exact topic, and I'm really looking forward to having this conversation. So without further ado, I would love to welcome Ashley Barnes to the podcast. How are you today?
I'm good. Thank you for having me.
Yes, welcome. We're really excited to have this conversation with you because if you tell us just a little bit about yourself, Ashley, you're relatively new to the flight medicine. Is that correct?
I am. Yeah, I started flight in August of 25. But I started EMS when I was 16. So I've been since 2009 is when I got in. So 18 years now.
Nice.
Still a youngin'.
Yeah, you're still young.
So you have been doing this for a couple of years now, and you enjoy EMS. You probably got the EMS bug like the rest of us did. Once you're bitten by it, you're stuck on it for the rest of your life. It's something that you just really enjoy, and it's in your blood, right? Like we all think, yeah, we got this. This is the best career. This is so awesome. And then you decided to take the next step into flight medicine. And if you can just kind of walk us through like a little bit about your career so far and where you ended up and what your flight experience is at the moment.
I went through EMT class my junior year of high school and got my EMT certification like going into my senior year. And obviously I couldn't do a lot of my certification at the time because I wasn't 18, but we had in the region that I lived in, it was mostly volunteer EMS at that time. So I was active in my volunteer squad. So I rode as like a third person. I had my little red shirt to mark me.
I love it.
And I loved it. I mean, my parents couldn't keep me at home on the weekends. Like Saturday morning, bright early, I was at the station ready to go. And I fell in love with EMS from like my first day of my time. And it's funny, I will never forget my first call. And I was like, oh, this is what EMS is. My first call was a little like old lady that fell down and skinned her knee in a parking lot. But you know what? I wrapped that knee better than anybody ever has. And
yeah.
I've always loved, like, I love this career. I got into EMS and got my EMT actually to work towards nursing because I knew I wanted to get into the medical field. My family really encouraged me to get into nursing. But I couldn't make the switch once I got into EMS. I'm an adrenaline junkie. I like being out in my community. I love making connections with people like in their most vulnerable times in their homes and everything like that. So like, this job is it's not just a job to me. It's very special to me. And it really is a part of who I am. But I did that for a long time. I was also a dispatcher, like paid dispatcher while I was a volunteer EMT. And then throughout the years, I progressed up in my certification. I moved states, actually. I moved to North Carolina, which is not far from where I grew up, because I wanted to do full-time EMS. And where I was from at the time, it was fire-based. So you had to be a firefighter to get paid as an EMT or a medic. And I wanted nothing to do with fire. You can bring me.
I'm right there with you. Yeah, I'm right there with you.
Yeah. Me too.
And like from there, like my whole career just kind of took off. Like I was able to really focus on just EMS alone as my career pathway. And I got into teaching. Flight had always been in the back of my mind, but it never felt like a possibility. Like it felt like something that I thought was really cool that I would never reach, because every opportunity that we landed the helicopter, like the crew would come on and I'd be like starstruck, right? Like absolutely starstruck. I'm not afraid to admit it. And like and I'm like, I want to be like that when I grow up. Like these are the people who I want to be like, because in the middle of absolute chaos, and we've run through all of our protocols and we have nothing else to do but pray at this point, these like magnificent beings would walk in and just like, they're like, oh no, you've done great. And like, it was just like the trust and like the verification and like that sense of like calm. And it's like, well, finally there's people here that know what they're doing. Like, thank God. And I just always looked up to the flight crews, and I kind of immersed myself into it as soon as possible, of going to trainings, networking with the flight agencies, and not even really because I was like trying to get a job. I just wanted to learn from them. Like I never wanted to just be good at my job. Like I want to be the best for my patients. Yeah. And that's like where I saw flight medicine. And I knew I'm going to do it one day, but I'm not going to do it until I think I'm ready. And I finally I had to push myself to that point of like, I am good enough. So like becoming your own hero, it's very nerve-wracking. You don't want to disappoint yourself or anybody else. So. And so now I've been doing flight for 7 months now, something like that.
I love this story, and I think this is like so important for us to share. And thank you, Ashley, for doing that, because, for those of us that have been doing it, for a little while, it's really nice to, like, it needs to be like humbling. Like, I can tell you right now, when I go to work tomorrow, like, just talking right now, like, I feel that, like, it takes me back to those thoughts where I was in that same position. The flight crew shows up and it's like, man, that's a cool onesie. And yeah, but like you said, you're just like, man, this is so great. Like, they're showing up and like they're being calm and they're very like into what is going on. And you're thinking the world is ending for this patient. And then two other people show up and they're like, no, we got this, and I was say, yeah, I was like, not a big deal. And you're like, oh, okay.
Did I ever
just
act, right? Like,
right. Yeah. Like, oh, is it that bad? I thought it was. But it's just so nice to really hear, like, that's the drive. And I love that this started for you when you were 16. That's amazing. I was learning how to drive and trying to match clothes at 16. So let alone going into a realm of where you're volunteering and helping other people. That was the furthest thing from my mind. I was afraid of my own shadow. So I think that's awesome that you had that ability to really find something that drove you to do something you love. It's not a job. It's truly that calling and that passion for you. So I love this story. I think this is awesome.
Yeah, I have a similar kind of entrance into it where, I started when I was 17. I was still in high school. I was like, oh, this is just going to be a great thing to put on my resume to go to med school, right? And then we won't talk about the mistakes I make at college as to, why we didn't go that route. But I was like, this is just, getting my EMT is just going to be a great thing to be able to put on the resume, and it's going to look great for that. And I don't know. I started doing it and I was like, man, this is freaking awesome. And I too can remember my first call. I was working an evening. I was volunteering, going through school at the local ambulance company there, and we ended up going down to the bowling alley and picked up some drunk person, and they had fallen and like hurt their leg. And so we got to, haul them into the hospital. And like, I don't know, it was not like, there was nothing special about it. There was nothing. I look back on that now and I'm like, man, I've had like 3,000 of those calls. Right. But that is one that I always remember. And it was just like that pivotal moment where I'm like, this is pretty awesome. I really love this career, and I love taking care of people, and I love being out in the community doing that. And obviously I transitioned away from that a little bit by going to the hospital and working nursing for a little while. But that was always what I missed, was like that being out in the community and working in the elements and having that, constant adversity, if you will, that you just have to adapt and overcome with each of these calls that you go on. So
I wish, like, so collectively we all say, man, if I just wrote a book, like, no, seriously, if all of us just wrote down all the one-off weird things that has happened in our careers, like, the people in this field, we would totally believe that. We'd be like, oh, wow, yeah, that's awesome. But like, people that don't do this, they'd be like, there's no way someone actually did that. And you're like, they did.
Believe it or not.
How insane humanity is until you get into people's homes on the worst days of their lives. Like, it's just like,
yeah,
you're like, oh, I'm doing okay.
Campfire stories. Wonderful.
Yes, for sure. So now, Ashley, you've been doing flight medicine now for a hot second, and you are, I'm assuming, loving it at this point, right? Yes, no,
yes.
Maybe everything you dreamed it would be and more.
And it's so funny because I very much like made sure I was prepared for this. I am your typical type A personality of like, I'm not going to do something until I'm there. So I did countless ride-alongs with multiple different agencies, different flight crews. I did future flight crew for the last cohort. I did like 2 critical care prep courses. Like, I'm a ball of nerves, like, all the time when it comes to like self-success. I am. And I was like, I love this and I'm ready. And then I started and I was like, so every single one of my ride-alongs that I did was mostly scene flights, which was very weird because like all of the flight crews were like, this is a strange day. Like, we had a couple of IFTs like here and there, but I didn't realize how like off kilter I would be at the bedside environment. And my first patient in flight was like this insane ICU patient that was on like 8 drips with bilateral art lines and on a vent getting confused. He was at DIC, so the art lines infiltrated, and like, I mean, it was, and my preceptor looks at me and he's like, any ideas? And I was like,
help.
I have no idea what to do right now. As a matter of fact, like, can I just go like comfort the family? Like, I don't know what you want to do. But I can do that. I can talk to people. And like after that, I'm like, what did I get myself into? Like kind of like what y'all said. I'm like, there's no way. Like there's so much information all at once. And I was like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this, but I'm still going to give it a solid try. And it was just, you have all of these devices and all of these strips, and you have to know all of these doses. And then you have like all of, like the flight physiologies and stuff to like throw in there for like anticipation factors and aircraft safety. And I'm like, I need a drink. I don't know what I'm doing. And I don't feel like a grown-up right now. So like that first call, I felt so overwhelmed and so defeated, like completely defeated. And I'd say for like the first couple of months, I was like, maybe this isn't for me. But slowly I started to like get my feet wet some. And I'm like, oh, I can do this. Okay. Just like one step at a time. Just keep swimming. We'll get there.
Yeah.
I had to learn patience. Coming into this, that was one of the biggest things. And I still work on it actively, but like just patience with myself, because every single patient, there's something new that I haven't seen before, which is terrifying in a good way, but also really cool because I get to learn from every single patient. And I don't get to learn a little bit. Like I learn a lot from every single patient. And I just feel myself becoming a better provider every shift, which is awesome. Like you feel that that growth like every single day.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140 plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
When we talk about like when we first step into this role of being a flight nurse or flight paramedic, we have this idea of what it would be like. But like you said, that first flight that you get an absolute train wreck, you know, and you walk into that room and the hospital, or whether it was the EMS crew, if it was a scene response, you're wearing that uniform. So they automatically assume you know exactly what you're doing. Whether you're training or not, they don't know that unless you throw that out there. Occasionally, sometimes when they see 3 people, they're like, someone's training, but they still, that doesn't matter.
It's the one with look in her eyes saying
it's still the flight suit that's still like perfect. You know, like it's not faded and worn out, you know, it can stand up by itself. Yeah. The Nomex isn't like beat up, you know,
it hasn't been tested.
But like people have this like presumption that they're like, oh, thank God they're here. They're going to handle all of this. And then your face, well, I should say my face will easily say exactly like the thoughts that are in my head, because it gets really hard for me to hide that. But you brought up such a good point of where you were like, I don't know if I should be doing this. And I think for all of us that do this type of work, we are our own worst critics and we just beat ourselves up. Like if I miss one small thing on like the checklist, or if I forget something minor, that's like end of the world to me. So God forbid it's an actual significant thing that I cause or whatever, then I feel even worse. So I would hope that for anybody that's listening, that's coming into this, if you're feeling that, like you said, in the first few shifts, just keep swimming. Like you said, just keep going and make the mistakes, but just be open and honest and give yourself, you said you had to learn patience. That's tough for us, you know. That's really hard.
Yep.
and I know we'll talk about this in a little bit, but there's like, you have a medic coming into this role, you also have nurses coming into this role, and it's a different environment for all of us, but it's also intertwined into the environment that we're used to.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that I'm like, oh, this is home. Like you land me in the middle of the highway for a bad crash. I'm like, I'm your girl. I got you. But you put me in still, I mean, 7 months in, and I know that's not very long, but like we're a very busy program. So I've gotten a lot of like patient encounters.
Yeah.
You still put me into an ICU room, and I'm like, can we have another 20 minutes onto our bedside time? Because I'm gonna have to like, he's gonna have to work with me here. And it's a transition for both mindsets coming in. And it's like, you just need to give yourself some grace because you're gonna mess up.
Yeah.
And it's harder on us, I think, going into flight. I've always done that too. I've always been graceful with myself, moving up in certifications. But in flight, everybody goes in with some kind of experience, you know? It's like, well, I'm a good medic. I know how to do my job. And then you get into this and it's like, wait a minute.
I thought I knew what I had to do for these patients.
Yeah, and it's crazy, like little things that I've always done over the last 18 years, like putting a monitor on a patient. Like I've always worked with life packs, and I'm using a Zoll now. I didn't realize how much of a shock that would be to me. Like it's just a different piece of equipment. I don't have the muscle memory to it. And it's like, I feel like I don't even know how to hook a patient up to a monitor, blood pressure cuff on them anymore. But like I can sit here and tell you pharmacokinetics of everything in the drug bag. Like what is this? It's like this weird like mental offloading of just like the tiny things, because everything we do feels so big in this environment.
Well, and I think that, you certainly hit on a lot of good points, and we'll certainly expand upon them throughout the rest of the podcast. But I think that, one of the reasons that I feel that this podcast is so important is because, if you're a seasoned provider, then you end up getting caught, and I think, into this silo sometimes where you forget what it was like. You forget that you too were in those shoes at some point, and you too had these same fears, and you too had the same imposter syndrome. And you were like, can I actually do this job? What kind of decision did I make? Like, how did I get myself to this spot? Right. And then all of a sudden you have like this moment where it's just like, all of a sudden that light just switches, and you're like, you know what? This is pretty awesome. And I do feel comfortable doing this. Like I remember when I started flying, I thought that I kind of had my act together as a provider beforehand. I thought I was good working in the environments that I was working in. And I started doing flight medicine, and I was like, I don't know jack. Like there is a whole different mindset to all of this, And so it was this big culture shock for me. But I get to this point in my career now, and I look back and I'm like, I've been doing this for so long that I forget what that feels like sometimes. And I think that this is a good reminder, and having this discussion is a good reminder for all of our seasoned providers out there, because who are the people that are training those new clinicians coming into this role? And it's all of those seasoned, some very well-seasoned providers that are out there that may forget what it's like to be in a new provider's shoes. And so I wanted to be able to have that discussion, because I feel like there are challenges, right? And you mentioned it a little bit. You take a paramedic who can run circles around anybody on any, scene call on the street, in the ambulance, and they're top of their game. And now you put them into this ICU where you got, mechanical circulation, 8 drips, vented with some wonky vent settings in there, and you expect them to just kind of thrive, right? Like that's not how this works. And then conversely, you take that nurse who may have only minimal pre-hospital experience or no pre-hospital experience at all, and now you throw them onto a scene call in the middle of the highway where you have to triage multiple patients and figure out which one you got to end up taking with. Like that is totally out of their wheelhouse. And so I think that we forget what those feelings are like, and we forget what those emotions are like, and how we go home at the end of the day and we're like, what just happened? So like where you kind of started before is where I want to continue for kind of the first part of this discussion is like, when you were coming into this, since this is something that's relatively new to you, you felt like you were a very seasoned provider working on the ambulance, and you were, kind of at the top of your game, and you were, in it to win it at that point. And then you transitioned over to flight. And what were some of those challenges that you faced? And then, talking with other people, what challenges have you heard that a lot of new providers that are coming into kind of don't necessarily anticipate or run into when they start doing flight medicine?
So the things that I anticipated I would have the most difficulty with was actually not true at all. Like I thought that I was going to have like a really hard time with the aviation aspect, like learning the aircraft and aircraft safety and kind of the logistical stuff of that, like how to be a good like teammate with the pilot, because I'd never been in that environment. Turns out that actually like fell on me pretty easily, and our pilots are amazing. And what got me the most, I just like touched on it, was the hospital environment. And where I've taken thousands of patients into a hospital, like I drop them off and I leave. Like that's what I've been used to my whole life. And then maybe I'll get an update on them at some point, like learn a little bit from it. But just in my first patient ever was the perfect example, because when I tell you, I mean, I've never seen so many bags attached to somebody. And like I'd never seen an art line in my life. I'd never worked in a hospital setting, so I had no reason to see it. I'd never worked transport. At least in this, I did transport early on as an EMT doing like dialysis runs and stuff. But like I was never exposed to any of this, and it was so overwhelming. And I remember like when I kind of started getting to the point in orientation where I was like the primary provider, so I'm doing like the full patient assessment and like getting the SBAR and stuff from the nurses. And I'm like, now I have lab values. Like, what are these numbers and what am I supposed to do with them? Like, I know what they mean, but like, what am I supposed to do with them? Like, the only lab value
How do
I'm
you
using.
Correlate them?
Right. Yeah. And then you take to the fact that I'm not now the one initiating that first set of medical care. So you have to throw in like, what has the hospital done, or the EMS crew, rather, even on scene calls, like what medications have they given? What labs have they run? What imaging has been had? What is going to be safe for us to do at this point because of all that, like interactions? And it was just a much deeper thought process than what I was used to, because in EMS, we get there and it's like, treat the life threats and transport quickly to the closest appropriate facility, right? Like that's the answer on every EMS test ever. And it was just, and the environment was so much like slower than I anticipated. Like again, I'm used to getting in, you get a quick primary survey, you treat the life threats, you get your vitals, you work on getting the patient out, and you do everything else during transport. And here it's like, no, we can step back, we can take our time. Of course, unless it's a time sensitive, like a stemming or a stroke, and you want to get out there quickly. But if you have like a train wreck medical patient that's still not stabilized, it's not a rush, go ahead, get them stabilized, because now you have not only regular transport operations on the EMS standpoint that may change a patient's physiology, but now you have altitude changes and all of these things that go into it. And it's like, well, what can we do to make this safe for the patient to fly now? And it's just a couple of little new things that are thrown in there that felt really heavy. And I'm like, I feel like I'm getting too much information. Yeah, I never thought there would be such a thing as too much information, but it's like, what do I do with this? And that has been the biggest mindset shift for me in talking to doctors. Like, I don't know why that was a weird thing for me. And I'm like, like I'm used to just telling them what I've done and then leaving. But now I'm like talking to a doctor and like, I don't know, they're giving me advice on like transport, or I'm like asking them for really, really big orders that maybe they haven't done yet. And you have to like approach that so much differently than what I'm used to.
Very much so.
I think that was probably one of my biggest things that I assumed that was way different than like the reality of it. Was like, you go to the interfacility. We know what the scene call is, right? For us that are pre-hospital, we know what's going to happen. Injury or insult, medical event happens. Someone calls for help. We show up, we do some things, and we take them where they need to go. That's cool. You get to the hospital, right? And there's this perception that, well, everything's done at the hospital. So we're going to go there, get the patient. We're just going to put them on a stretcher, and we're going to move them from point A to point B. Boy, was I way shocked in that aspect of things. And it's so different because like hospitals, they're limited too, like we put this perception that they're going to fix everything. But in reality, that they can't. A doctor they're still a human, and with the vast wealth of knowledge and all the things that they bring to the table, they can only do so much with what's in front of them, and depending on the facility where they work. And there's so many like other aspects to that I just didn't even occur to me, that we go into one and I'm like, we're intubating this patient? Like, wouldn't they do that? Like.
Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
My first RSI was in a hospital. It wasn't even like a crazy scene. It was a stroke patient in a hospital. And it's crazy to me because, and maybe not too crazy to me because I understand this area. Like I've worked in this area for a while, but we're very rural. And our communities very much rely on these community-based hospitals, which are great. And every community should have that. But what I didn't realize was the level of resources that we don't have around here,
Right.
Like I knew that they weren't comprehensive stroke centers, like they don't have cath labs, but I didn't realize the actual magnitude of it until I started in flights. I mean, we have one hospital in this area that's a standalone ED with mid-level providers, like not a physician on staff. And they're one of our busiest customers. And it's not even because of like their knowledge or capabilities. Like they just legitimately don't have the resources.
Right. Yeah. They just don't. And it's not a dig on anybody. It's just because sometimes like the patient will roll through those doors, and when they see that, someone's on the phone calling for the aircraft before they even get the full first set of vitals and labs. And they're like, yo, so you'll get there and you are just as part of the process as they are trying to stabilize this patient. A lot of that blew me away because I was just like, oh my gosh, like you guys don't have any support. You don't have any help. My goodness. So I learned that a lot of times flight crews are huge proponents, and you might be the one needed support that rural facility and that physician needs. Like it's not a dig at the doctor. That's where they work. It could be very rural, and they're like, oh yeah, this patient needs blood, but we don't have that, or we don't have a CT. So you are just as important in that aspect to helping those providers work and stabilize that patient. Total shock to me when I first started.
Yeah, I hate it for the patients because you do get a delay in that
sure
bigger care that they need, but it's still something, right? Like it's still something to get them stabilized and get some answers. But it's like we show up, and the physicians in these smaller hospitals or the mid-level providers in these hospitals are like, thank God. Yeah. And it's like a Red Sea party.
Yeah.
And then it's not even like they've run away. It's like, hey, how can we help you?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we do to work as I've worked some codes in these hospitals, so it's some of the best teamwork I've ever seen in my life, and they fully integrate us into that. If not, let us lead it and have us integrate them into it in their environment. And it's very humbling to see that, and it's like, well, this is cool that I'm here.
Right.
It kind of it's that self-reflection of okay, I've done the hard work and I'm here, and this job is hard, and people are looking at me for these answers. Me and my crew, me and my partner, and it's like, okay, it's a heavy feeling and it's a big responsibility, but it's so cool to work as a team with these outlying hospitals that really need the resources that we bring to them because they don't have it. And then you're seeing the patient make these drastic changes and get better before we leave, and that's like, awesome, call us again.
Yeah.
Let's do that again.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think, you talk a lot about the transition for our paramedics coming into the flight industry and into those very overwhelming situations in the ICU where you have 6-8 drips, where you have all of that stuff going on with the vent and maybe mechanical circulation or something else is going on. But the reality is, for a lot of our nurses, it's the exact same thing. I mean, I think back to when I started in this, and most of my experience was from an ER perspective. And yes, I had EMS experience, and yes, I had ER experience, and I felt like I was comfortable and confident and competent in what I was doing in those environments. But then I'm walking into my first ICU where I've got 6-8 drips and all of this crazy stuff going on. And I'm sitting here thinking to myself, how on earth am I going to be able to like package all this up onto our tiny little bed, put them in the back of our tiny little helicopter, and get them to, another location safely and alive? That was this, it was a huge culture shock for me doing that, because it was like, how do we even make this work? And so I think going into the ICUs especially and dealing with some of those patients, that was some of my biggest eye-opening moments, because you don't realize how much can be going on with some of these patients and in what kind of a state they can be in when you get there. And these small community hospitals, it's not that they're doing a bad job. They've exhausted every resource they have. Yeah. And now we're expected to come in and be their savior in this situation and take that patient out of there and, maybe make a little changes and wave our magic wands and everything's going to all get better and we can move this patient out of there in no time. Right. And a lot of times that's just not the reality. And I think that was a big shock for me. It was like, okay, it's okay if I have to spend a little bit of time. And you mentioned a little bit of time at the bedside. I mean, I can certainly think of some of our patient populations when we start doing some of our NICU transports, nothing happens fast, which was also a huge shock for me, right? So it's not uncommon sometimes for some of those super critical patients that we're at the bedside hour and a half, 2 hours, 2.5 hours sometimes, just trying to stabilize and get them in a good spot to where we can safely move them. And I had no idea that that was kind of how things would go in this particular industry. And I think that there has been that transition from, you think back, years and years and years ago, I remember to the start of my EMS career, while that was still well into the industry for flight medicine, most of what was happening back then was scene calls. And I think that that's where a lot of our ER nurses and our paramedic teams really made the perfect complement together, because you had those two disciplines that one's used to bringing patients into the other one, and they're used to taking over care and moving it up that pathway. And so that was a good dynamic and a good team that really worked well together. And now we've seen that shift where we have trauma centers everywhere. We have stroke centers everywhere. We have heart centers everywhere. And even though they may not be able to handle the super critical stuff, they can at least get the ball rolling for a lot of these things. And now they're calling us to come into these super sick patients that have all this stuff going on with them. And the same crew with the same experience and the same training is now supposed to suddenly figure this out on a much higher level, right? Like that's what I think is that challenge. And I think that what that does, that ends up, being a struggle and causes a little bit of maybe a professional identity crisis for us, right? Like it's that imposter syndrome that happens. So what would you say, as far as for a lot of the clinicians that are coming into this new role, is that biggest professional identity change that they may struggle with?
I call it the thank God you're here mentality. And I think Blake's will I've been so accustomed in my career that when I need help, because I've exhausted my efforts, and like where I came from as a medic, we had very long transport times. So I like in pretty progressive protocols, but sometimes it just, the patient doesn't play by the textbook, right? When I need help,
damn it,
I call a doctor or a flight crew. Now I'm a flight crew, and doctors are calling me for help. So, get this high level facility, and like I said, like we'll walk into the room sometime, and it's like these physicians or nurse practitioners or PAs, like they look at us and like, thank God you're here. And it's like the Red Sea parts, and you walk in and they just let you do your thing, and it's like, wow, I'm the one that's trusted now. That's insane. And it's a
huge responsibility.
It is.
Huge responsibility.
It's terrifying. It's terrifying.
Yeah. I don't think I slept like properly at night for like the first 3 months on this job, because I'm way in over my head. Like everybody's looking to me like I have the answers, and I might not, like I have the answers to some things, but like I'm still a baby here, but they expect you to be of the same level of excellence as your seasoned flight crew as well, because we are an extension of the medical center, like the larger hospital. So you have that professional expectation, and that is a big responsibility, and it's a very heavy weight to carry. And like, you got to learn how to carry it.
It's not easy.
And no, it's not easy at all. And I feel like I'm just now getting to the point where I'm like, okay with it. Cause there's still some days where I'm like, oh man, I probably could have like had a better thought process about this or that. Like maybe I should have asked this question, just constantly second guessing myself. My partner's like, you did fine. And I'm like,
well, I hate to burst your bubble, Ashley, but that does never stop. There are still many shifts I come back and I'm like, man, if I just would have done this, or man, if I would have asked this question, or man, if I would have tackled it from this way. Like I constantly second guess myself in every single difficult transport that we go on, because like you said before, like just when you think you have it all figured out, your patient decides not to play by that playbook. And something else happens, and now you've got to suddenly shift gears, and you're like, what could I have thought about to make sure that this wouldn't have happened? Like, what could I have done to prevent this from occurring? And that never stops. It absolutely never stops.
I've been like this my whole life. Like I'm constantly, and it's because it comes from a good place. It really does, because I legitimately care about patients. Sure. Like and I don't lie when I tell families and patients, like for the next 45 minutes to an hour, like you're my mom or you're my dad, and I'm going to take care of you just how I would want them to be taken care of. And I do care, and I can do everything right and be like, but I need to find one thing that I could have done better. I need something away from this. Right. I've always been like that, but it's just even worse now. So much worse. And I think it's because I've worked so hard to get here, and I've wanted to be here for so long, and now I haven't, and I don't want to fail myself. I don't want to fail my patients. I don't want to fail the people who mentored me my whole career to get to this. And that puts an even like heavier weight on me. I'm like, well, it's not just like the patients that I'll fail or myself. It's like all these people that look up to me, the ones who have pushed me to do this. And I don't want to be a failure either, and that's like been really heavy on me. And I don't really know, like I do know why, but it's like, I know I'm doing fine. Like I passed orientation. Everybody told me I'm doing a good job. Like I get good feedback from my partners. But at the end of the day, I'm like, oh man, I did barely anything today, and I feel exhausted from reading everything.
But I think that brings up one of the most important things that I think was told to me at some point was, where you're at right now is exactly where you are supposed to be. And for as long as you're flying or whatever role that you're taking care of patients, if you just maintain that attitude, you are always going to be successful and do the right thing for your patients. And I think when we do this job, when we do this field, nobody tells us starting out that, hey, I hope you're okay with having a terrible diet at times, not getting any sleep, anxiety, push that through the roof, blood pressure up, like that would never be a good sell, that would never be a good sell. But what comes along with that is because we carry this immense responsibility because of, like you said, it's oh, thank God you're here, because it's that like not self-imposed, but this industry, the things that we are told and formed to do brings that expectation, right? So we don't want to fail. If we are quote unquote some of the last resorts for some of these patients, that's an enormous like mental responsibility that I think all of us that do this job, we carry that with us every day. I mean, I know I do. I don't think I've had a good night's sleep in like 20 years, antidepressants, bring them on, like let's keep it going. Zins and coffee in the morning. That's how I start my day, so I mean,
your monster midday then too.
I just have another coffee or a Zin. I've kind of gone down that road right now, but it's helping.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support.
When we onboard and when we bring on new clinicians, I know if Ashley, I met you in Future Flight Crew last year. Like, let's say you were coming to my program where I was working. If I saw you coming into our program, you're exactly the person that should be doing this job. You've been doing this since you were 16. You're the person that's your own worst critic, right? And so the balance that we have to have is we can do that to a point, but we can't, because I'm saying this because I'm guilty of it to this day. My wife will tell you, my coworkers will tell you, I will beat myself up all day, every day, worse than anything that could come about to me for just whatever happens, right? Maybe it's something for the patient. We did everything right. The patient doesn't respond, or maybe we missed something. Like, I carry that with me so hard because the people like us and all of our listeners, the people that do this job, we carry it so much deep into our heart and soul. It's hard because it becomes part of our identity. And when we onboard, I wish that we were a lot better at allowing and teaching people up and coming that it's going to be okay. Like, you're going to take this stuff home. That's inevitable. It's going to happen, but we have to have good ways to deal with that. And like Ashley, you said you've had to give yourself grace. You've had to learn patience. I wish we did a better job about doing that, like from the onset, and teaching, like, these are high expectations. And the reality is you are going to meet those expectations a lot of the time. Sometimes you might not. And that's okay, because as long as you were trying, I mean, we were going to make a mistake, and, it's not that everybody gets trophies type thing, but sometimes your best just won't be good enough, and sometimes you won't be at your best. And that's just the reality. And I think if we acknowledge that, and we kind of teach that to new people coming in, my hope is that it allows people to stay in this career for a long time without getting burnt out and just really self-loathing and then becoming me. So
caffeine and Zens.
But I think you brought up a great point there, Blake, in terms of the elevated expectations that we have in this role. I don't think... Is there even a way, though, to prepare? I think that's sometimes the difficult thing for a lot of people coming into this role for the first time or being new, and they're suddenly expected to do all of these extra things, right? Not only do they have increased expectations of them, not only do they have to now answer to everyone else, like, we have to go from being the person that's calling that helicopter crew to come and help, and we're observing them, to now being that crew that is being called in and all eyes are on us. And you have to adjust to this pressure and these expectations. And then I also may have to go to M&M and talk about when things didn't go right and be critiqued on the care that I'm providing for that particular patient, right? Like, all of these things are completely new experiences that I never had when I was a nurse in the ER, that I never had when I worked EMS. So it's a lot for somebody to come into this role and not necessarily have any kind of prior visibility on any of that. What would you say that was like for you? Like, do you feel the effects of the imposter syndrome, or like, do you feel those performance pressures on a daily basis? And like, how do you manage those?
Yeah, absolutely. That was, and I'm still getting used to it. And I find myself now, because in EMS, we had a QA and QI process. I worked for a very rural agency. I was neighbors and friends with everybody that I worked with. Everybody is trusted, and the QA and QI is like, hey, you didn't document this, or like, come into my office real quick, have a couple of questions about something you did. And it was very laid back and just more of a conversation. I'm like, I just want you to articulate this so I can explain it in case it comes up in a review or something. And nothing felt punitive. I never felt like I was under a microscope. And moving into flight, and I'm with a hospital-based agency, and I came from rural counties where there's so much oversight, which is a good thing, but it's a very stressful thing, right? Our medical directors are very visible to us, which I think is wonderful. That is something that I can say that EMS, like field EMS with, like, I never met my medical director in EMS. I knew his name. I couldn't tell you what he looks like. And that's a failure of the EMS system right there. I enjoy having my medical directors accessible to me. I know their office hours. They're in our main office, and on the days that they're there, I can walk right into their office and sit down and be like, hey, can I debrief a call with you? Like, I just want to kind of wrap my head around something. Yeah. And that's a great resource. But like the QA/QI process it's hospital-based, and that's not something I'm used to. And it feels like you're much more under a microscope. And where I feel like that's a good thing, because we can use that as improvement and go through continuing education where we do fall short and you don't meet certain metrics. It's also like I'm in the middle of a patient contact and I'm like, oh, wait a second. Like, I got a QA on like this thing like last week, and like, I don't like, what if I do the same thing again by accident? And like, oh, well, will they be okay with me doing this if they were okay with me doing that? And it's like this like mental shift of like, well, now I have these incredible physicians who are guiding me in this QA process, and I don't want to disappoint them. But I also like want to do what's right for the patient. I am still very much working on trying to find that balance, because like I want to be a good employee, but above all, I want to be a good provider, and that's been, I don't want to say uncomfortable. It's just been weird to get used to. I'm slowly getting there. But it's kind of caused me to like overthink. Every thought that I have, I overthink it. It's like every move that I make, I overthink it. Some things, maybe not. Like if I get a scene call where the patient needs to be managed right now, I'm not thinking about anything else.
Right.
But again, in the hospital setting, it's kind of like slower and like I have more time to think and more information. I'm like, oh gosh, I have too much time to think right now. Like I need some like adrenaline to pull me back.
Oh yeah. I shouldn't say hate is a very strong word. I really think the QA process gets so deeply flawed. And that was a struggle for me coming in, because I feel there's people out there that just love the sound of their own voice when they type. And I feel that there's definitely a place for it, but it has to be done the right way. And I feel like there's just so many things that when it comes to that particular aspect of this job, it's important. Trust me, I get it. But I think the way that it's brought about, if I was chief for a day, man, I would burn it all, start over, and really bring it up, because we have to understand that like we're human and we're taking care of patients, and like you said, the patients don't follow the textbook. I can't tell you how many times I wish I had my medic textbook and just held it in front of the patient and was like, see, you should be doing this. Why are you not doing this?
I can absolutely see you standing there having that lecture with your patients.
Literally, like, oh, come with me here to page 265 right here in CHF land. You should be responding to all this peep,
I can say like the QA process where I work, one thing I do like about it is we do peer QA. So everybody QAs. And I actually enjoy doing the QA because I can read these charts. And of course it's all, PHI and everything, like it's blacked out, but I can read the charts and I'm like, oh, this is really interesting. And then I'll like take notes and I have something to study. And like I've never seen a patient with this diagnosis. I've never taken care of it. So it's a great learning tool for me as somebody who's sitting down doing QA. And then it's actually a couple of days ago, I get a QA message on like a really bad patient that I had. And it said, wow, good job. Like, it was like they were like shocked at what was going on.
So when you got to give yourself that pat on the back.
And then I'll get some that are like, and it's like a list of like, hey, like with this condition, maybe you should think about these things. And it's more of like a learning opportunity when it's that way, but it's still like, I'm still like in the spotlight because everybody reading these, like they can easily pull up the documents, like the people are not going to see my name written on it. Like they know it's me.
Yeah, they can read it and see. They know exactly it's Ashley writing this. And I agree with that. I think that's the whole point of the QA process, like, you know, to really take some of those things, as long as that is the main focus on those things. And like, it should help us be better. The thing that I think goes the other way sometimes is where like people will just put in things like, hey, you did all this right, but
yeah,
you didn't get the temperature, you know, or you didn't put all that. Like I said, those are metrics. I don't like it. I have to deal with it. So I do it. I despise it. I do my job. For all those listening, I do my job. You can read my reports. But no, I always want the process to be, you should never leave like some type of QA review. You shouldn't leave there feeling like someone just like beat you up on anything. And that's the process. Cause I think to be a good clinician, like you have to be able to put yourself in that other clinician's shoes, whatever happened, they went through with that patient, especially these calls, and especially actually you being newer, like you are an experienced provider, but you're newer in this industry. Patients still have heart attacks, you know, and, you know, like you said, you were like, man, I've been using the life packs forever. Now I'm putting this Zoll on, and you're like, boy, this 12 lead paper comes out of the side and gets bunched up. What is that?
I get like 5. What do I do?
Yeah. Oh my gosh. Why didn't I read this sooner? Well, if it would have printed fine, I would have been able to read it. No. But yeah, my hope again, when we talk about the things for like people coming into this realm, and as we do these processes, whether it's how you're instructing or bringing up new clinicians that are new to this, just, man, anything you can do to just put yourself in that person's shoes, and don't ever just don't forget where you came from when like you first started. Cause that was huge to me. I think I slept in my flight suit for like 4 days because it was so awesome. Plus it was kind of stiff and I tried to loosen it
up. So many comments, so little time. But I think you have a really good point with some of that. But I think where the difference is with some of those things is, especially with the QA process, right? Because I think that this is a huge culture shock for a lot of people coming in. You know, Ashley, if you think back to your years on the street as a paramedic, and Blake for you as well, I think back to my EMS days, and it was like, you know, when I first got off orientation as an EMT or a PHRN, like, you know, it was 100% of my charts were audited because I was brand new, right? And then it went down to 75% of my charts were audited. And then it went down to about 50% of my charts were audited once they felt like I was, you know, competent and able to do my job. And then it was like only a select group of charts or select group of patient populations was audited. Now in flight medicine, every 100%. Single patient is audited. Every little thing you do suddenly is under scrutiny of somebody somewhere, and usually 2 or 3 people. Mm-hmm. Because everything is, you know, quote unquote, you know, high risk, low volume, right? So like, I think that's a huge culture shock for a lot of people coming in, because you're not used to having that spotlight on you all of the time. And that's a lot to like, that's a lot of pressure. And then you're right, it affects you when you go on those next calls. You're like, oh my God, somebody yelled at me because I did X, Y, or Z on, you know, 3 transports ago. And so now I can't do that anymore. I need to make sure that I do something different. Like, you know, you second, it makes you second guess yourself even more when you've been Monday morning quarterbacked on everything that you're doing. Right. I think that's always a challenge. And I think that's a big
performance anxiety, which like that can be a good thing because it can push you to do the right thing. But you spiral out of control. And
but it could drive you insane.
Right.
And you're just like, oh,
and then you get
it's like, you know what? Forget
analysis
it. Everyone
paralysis.
gets a sugar. I'm checking every sugar. Everybody. Doesn't matter. Temperatures. Everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to hear more stories that promote the personnel and equipment behind the missions in public safety aviation. Lastly, stand by for a message from our sponsors.
Thank you to our sponsor, Precision Aviation Group. Mission-critical operators and fleet managers rely on Precision Aviation Group as a worldwide leading rotor and fixed-wing MRO provider. PAG provides tip-to-tail solutions in 4 MRO segments: avionics, components, engines, and manufacturing DER services. A single point of contact gives you access to over 150 million in inventory globally, 24/7. Just call 800-537-2778. Precision Aviation Group. Others sell parts. We sell support. Thanks to our sponsor, Airbus. Airbus provides the most efficient helicopter solutions to its customers who serve, protect, save lives, and safely carry passengers in demanding environments. Its civil and military helicopters are flying all over the world, making missions possible. Visit airbus.com for more information.
Thank you to our sponsor, Metro Aviation. Metro Aviation, the world's largest family-owned aeromedical operator, offers comprehensive aircraft services with 140-plus aircraft in over 25 states. The Completion Center installs medical and law enforcement kits and avionics, serving diverse aviation needs including offshore, utility, VIP, and corporate sectors.
Thanks again for listening to this episode of the Valor Flight Crew Podcast. A huge thank you to Ashley for joining us and sharing such an honest perspective on the challenges and growth that come with entering flight medicine. Conversations like this are important, not just for new providers, but for the industry as a whole. Building strong clinicians starts with strong mentorship, healthy feedback, and supporting one another both professionally and personally. Strong support is also essential to this line of work, and it helps shape us all as clinicians as we enter this level of critical patient care. Solid foundations lead to positive growth, maturity, and eventually into excellent leadership. This may be how we continue to take this path to another level for each other and our patients. To all our listeners, thanks for joining us for this conversation and your continued support of the Valor Plus platform. Whether you're part of a flight crew or just passionate about the world of air medical transport, we hope you found some takeaways to apply on your next shift. If you haven't already, head over to www.echoflightcrew.org to learn more about the teams and programs that support this community, and be sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss upcoming episodes. Thanks for listening. We'll catch you next time on the Valor Flight Crew Podcast, where we continue to highlight the people and stories that make this industry great.